This is big news. The first hybrid ute is here in Australia, and it's not a BYD or a Ford Ranger. It's this, the 2024 GWM Cannon Alpha. GWM wants to take on the premium ute segment with this, its most luxurious and most powerful ute yet. And with the name Alpha, it surely means that this is a serious bit of kit. In today's video, we're going to look at everything to do with the GWM Cannon Alpha. It's our first view, our first impressions, and our first drive of this ute. We're going to see whether it's fit for purpose for Australia and where it fits in within the massive ute segment that's currently available on Australian shores. But before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to Chasing Cars. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Direct. So what exactly is the ute we have on test today? Well, we're lucky. We've got the flagship Ultra Hybrid variant. It's priced from $64,990 drive away. It's about $7,000 more expensive than the turbo diesel version that's also coming, but it's a little bit cheaper than a Toyota Hilux SR5. So to put that in perspective, it's not too bad in terms of value. Now, in terms of dimensions, this car sits somewhere between a Ford Ranger and a Ford F-150. It's bigger than most utes on the market. It's got a bigger presence, and I think that's actually a good thing. So under the bonnet of this Ultra Hybrid is a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, but it's got an electric motor in the transmission. Total outputs for this car are pretty amazing. 255 kilowatts and 648 newton meters of torque. So it's a pretty serious ute. For a point of comparison, that's more than a Ford Ranger's turbo diesel V6 engine, but a little bit less than a Ford F-150's twin turbocharged V6 engine. If you're curious about the hybrid, here's a bit of a breakdown on the hardware of this ute. Underneath the Cannon Alpha is the same hybrid system also available on the Tank 500 large SUV. And while it's a hybrid, it's not a plug-in hybrid unlike the upcoming Ford Ranger variant. The electric motor in this vehicle is actually integrated into the torque converter of the 9-speed automatic transmission. The electric motor itself produces 78 kilowatts of power and 268 newton meters of torque. Assisting this motor is a small 1.76 kilowatt hour battery pack. 3 levels of regenerative braking are also available as standard for the hybrid. And if you're not sure about buying a hybrid ute, the good news is that GWM will also offer this Alpha body style with a 2.4 litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine that produces 135 kilowatts and 480 newton meters. So what's it like sitting inside the new GWM Cannon Alpha? Well, this is a pretty premium place to be. It's a big step up over a regular Cannon ute or a lot of other utes in the segment, to be honest. It's really well put together, lots and lots of soft touch materials, lovely leather steering wheel, lovely leather seats, which are both electric and heated on both sides. Everything just seems so much more premium. I feel like I'm sitting in like a Mercedes X-Class, or it just feels so different to what I'm used to. I do like the sort of wood finish here on the dash, even though it's clearly not wood. Probably would have been better as wood. But yeah, all these materials, they're nice and soft touch. It's soft touch basically everywhere. There's a little bit of scratchy plastic around the place. But for the most part, this is a really big step up for GWM. So the big centerpiece inside this cabin is the screen. It's a 14.6 inch unit. It runs wireless and wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's got a pretty good infotainment system. The software is quite good. It's quite easy to use, quite functional, but the climate control is embedded into it, which is a shame. I like having an individual climate control thing down in the center there. It's a little bit easier to use and you don't have to switch in and out of CarPlay. Also big in this interior is this 12.3 inch instrument cluster, which is very clear, it's high quality, and it sort of shows all of the safety systems working and how the cameras are showing other cars on the road, and also how this car is centered in the lane. It doesn't have a lot of functionality other than that. You can obviously see all your trip readouts, your speedo, etc., which is fine, but I think it could be a little bit easier to use, especially with these buttons on the steering wheel. There's just a little bit of a learning curve with the 12-inch screen. So GWM says this is a premium interior, and with that comes a lot of features, which is really excellent. So the main things that really stand out to me are the sunroof. You get this cool sort of aircraft style drive selector, which I really like. You've got a wireless charging pad here, plus some rather inconveniently placed charging ports underneath this center bit, which is a little bit frustrating and hard to see, especially at night. You've also got a POA clock, which is definitely new. POA is what this brand is also known as in China. And you also have a very, very deep bin to store stuff in here. This little tray here in the center, it slides back, and inside is 2 cup holders. Pretty handy. The door bins are not too bad. They're pretty deep, and I think you'd easily fit a couple of water bottles in there, no problem. So here we are in the back of the Alpha Ute, and I think it's actually a pretty good place to be for an adult. You do have enough room back here. It's not the most spacious. It's not like an F-150 in terms of its very luxurious and spacious back seat. It's fine with the driver's seat as it is. I've got a little bit of knee room, got plenty of toe room, and a surprising amount of headroom, which is really great. Now, in terms of standard stuff back here, you've got magazine holders, you have rear air vents, you also have ventilated and heated seats back here, which is pretty impressive. And these seats also do move, they're electric adjustment, so that's pretty cool. You don't see that in a lot of utes. Now, you also get 2 USB ports right down the bottom, as well as a handy switch to open this rear window. It's electric, that's a nice touch as well. In terms of other storage, you've got a fold down armrest with a little nook for your phones, and also you have a wireless charger in the back seat. You don't see that too often. As well as 2 pop-out cup holders. So back here, I think the kids would be pretty happy. So here we are at the back of the tray of the Alpha Ute, and it's a bit of a different looking Ute tray than you would have seen before. You simply press this button here, it opens up, but it swings out like a barn style door, which is kind of cool. You can open up both sides, and inside you've got a pretty standard tray. It's a 1500mm long tray, and it's 1100mm across. So it's plenty big enough for all your tools, or if you wanted to put a canopy or something on there, it's plenty of space. It's got that longer length, which is excellent. Inside you do get a little tub liner, which is obviously really good. If you're putting metal objects and stuff in there, it can really scratch the paint, so that's an awesome point. There's a few tie down points. There's 2 at the front and 2 at the back. So it's simple, but it works. It should be able to still do the job. So let's talk a little bit about the running costs for this Alpha Ute. Starting off with warranty, GWM offers a 7-year unlimited kilometer warranty for the Cannon Ute range. In terms of servicing, it'll be required every 12 months or 15,000 kilometers, whichever occurs first. Exact service pricing is yet to be determined for this vehicle, but if you base it off a Tank 500, it'll be costing you around $2,750 over 5 years. So in terms of fuel efficiency, GWM claims that this car can do about 9.8 litres per 100 kilometres combined. However, during our testing of around 150 kilometres, we're getting about 11 to 12 litres per 100 for this hybrid ute, which I just think is a little bit too high for a hybrid powertrain. Sure, this car's fully loaded and pretty heavy, but I was expecting it to get at least around 10. But there is a plus. This car takes simple 91 octane unleaded fuel. So what is Australia's first hybrid ute like to drive? Well, let's start with the hybrid system itself, which I found to be okay, not great, and I'll explain that in a couple of points. The first thing is, well, it's a good thing. It's very quiet and refined, much more refined than a turbo diesel engine that you will find in so many other utes in the market. It's also got a very good on-demand 4x4 system, which I found is great, especially on days like today where it is very rainy and you need that grip. You're coming out of a corner, just gives you that security and safety, which is just excellent. Now, something that's not so good about the hybrid system in this car is the fact that it just doesn't feel that powerful. You've got a few drive modes down here that you can choose from. In Eco, I found it to be very sluggish, and I actually found one instance when I was on the road, I had to get around someone quickly. There was a car behind me, and it just wouldn't respond. The car did not respond to my inputs. It took like a second and a half to get going. So I'm not really sure that this transmission and this hybrid pairing is very good. And also it's a little clunky. So when I say clunky, I mean that it's a little jerky, it's a little bit unrefined. I just don't think it's super well polished. Now, even when you put the car into sport mode, yes, it does get that throttle response a little bit better, but this does not feel like 255 kilowatts and over 640 newton meters of torque. It just doesn't feel like it. some of the other utes on the market feel actually a little bit more punchier than this. And while this isn't necessarily the most exciting powertrain, it's also kind of thirsty. Over about 150 kilometers of testing over the last couple of days, we're averaging just shy of 12 liters per 100 for a hybrid. I think you might get slightly better if you're in a turbo diesel ute. I know that the 2.4 litre engine that's going to be in this car, in the other variants, has a better fuel claim than this. So not sure whether it's the weight or the specification or the amount of high premium features this car has that's making it very heavy and quite inefficient. So that was a real shame. Now on to my second point, and that's a big point for this car. How is it day to day? Does it fulfill its purpose as a ute? And is it comfortable? Well, around town, the ride is surprisingly firm and jittery and a little bit uncontrolled. Now, some utes are quite jittery in the market today, but the real ballpark figures are the Ford Ranger and the Volkswagen Amarok. I think they're really the benchmark at the moment of how a ute should ride in 2024. However, this ute I have found just doesn't hit the mark. GWM has said that they want to make this car as premium and good to drive as possible, but I just found it was uncomfortable. And around the city streets, you're bumping around all over the place. It's very firm, and I think it can be better. You do get a lot of head toss, you get a lot of just uncomfortableness through the seats. The seats themselves are quite good, but I feel that if you're in the back seat, it could be quite a jittery and uncomfortable ride. Now, my third point about driving this GWM Cannon Alpha is to do with the safety assistance systems. Now, we have found through Chasing Cars' testing that it is a bit of a mixed bag with these safety assist systems. The biggest problem here is the driver monitoring system, which is frankly super annoying, and I just wish that it wasn't a thing. It comes up all the time. If you're looking at your Google Maps on the screen, it'll tell you off. It'll say, look, you need to be paying more attention to the road. And while I understand that, what happens all the time, on and off, on and off. Now, you can switch this off, but it will come on every single time. There's no real workaround. You could probably put some tape over the driver monitoring thing, which is just there on the side of the A-pillar, but I don't recommend doing that. I just think there should be a software update to fix these safety issues. Now, the other safety assistance systems, well, there are a lot on this car. It's constantly bonging at you, it's constantly beeping and carrying on. I just think it actually distracts you from what you're doing, and that is driving the car. And I think really a software update could do a huge amount of change to this whole safety assist systems and make them better tuned for Australian roads. So all in all, I think driving the Alpha has been an interesting experience because there's certainly good points, but there's also not so good points. Sure, that hybrid system, or this hybrid system, is very quiet and refined. It's just not very well tuned, and it's thirsty. And then there's the suspension, which I think just could ride a little bit better, a little bit more refined and less jittery. More polished product is what I'm really looking for. This is a premium ute. This is a $64,000 ute. I just expect a little bit better in terms of how a ute's going to drive in 2024. So what's my take on GWM's first hybrid ute, and in fact the first hybrid ute in Australia? Well, I think it's got a very competitive price, it's got a quiet hybrid system, and I think it's really feature packed. It feels premium inside, it feels quality, and it doesn't feel like cheap Chinese utes of the past. Unfortunately, that suspension system is just not up to scratch. It feels agricultural and sort of a little old school. It doesn't feel premium as this car is marketed as. I just feel it could ride a little bit better and be better in a day-to-day environment, especially with how much these cars are used in the city. Also, that hybrid system, even though it is quiet and refined, it is lacking some punch. You know, I thought 255 kilowatts would be plenty, but it just doesn't feel it. This could be a pretty heavy car. I'm not sure of the exact weight of the car, but I have a feeling the weight is sort of letting down this whole situation. And on that, it's making the hybrid system a little bit less efficient than what I was expecting. We've been seeing up to 12 litres per 100 kilometers for this hybrid ute. I think you may even get better on the turbo diesel, but we're gonna have to find out about that at a later stage. So what do you guys think about hybrid utes? Are they something that you'd consider for a day-to-day car or even for work or play? Well, let us know down in the comment section below. And while you're there, make sure you like and subscribe, as always, to Chasing Cars.